Well, hello. You are with members of the UCSB Ombuds office. I'm Don Lubach, and with me is Dr. David Rasch. And it's good to see you, David.
Hi, Don.
David might be in just a few offices over from me. You just never know in these Zoom years. But I'm so delighted to talk with you about a topic that is not so delightful, which is bullying as it occurs in the academy, and specifically in graduate student and faculty relationships. And why I'm excited to talk with you about this, David, is that your many years as the Ombuds at Stanford University, and also your background as a psychologist, and just years of experience wading into this difficult topic makes you one of my favorite people to talk with about this unfortunate topic. So the first question I have for you is, some people deny that bullying exists in academia. They just think it's just a hard life at a university. Particularly graduate life is a hard life. So can we start there? Is that true? Is graduate life just hard, or is it made unnecessarily hard by some abrasive behaviors?
Yeah, good question. I think both of those things are true. It is a very challenging chapter for many graduate students, if not most. And in addition to that, there can be additional problems that come up. Primarily, the most pronounced ones that we see at the Ombuds office have to do with advisor relationships, but there can also be conflicts with other staff or other co-graduate students in a variety of ways. Bullying or mobbing, these kinds of things can come up. So yes, I would say certainly there are problems that would fall under the general title of bullying. And just a word about that word bullying, it's very vague and very general, and it encompasses a lot of different behaviors and has different meanings for different people. So it might not be that useful. Often you have to look at the specifics of every situation to understand what's the problem, why is it a difficulty, and what are the ways to work with it.
Yeah. And I like to look at things on a continuum, and I imagine that when you work, and I know that when you work with visitors who are experiencing bullying, you have people talk about the facts, what's happening day to day, and these incidences, if they're well documented, which, by the way, graduate students, very smart to document not only your research but your lab life, what you're doing, they kind of fall on a continuum. And maybe I'll put one up on the screen that we've been using in the office here, but can you talk about this behavior on a scale, on a spectrum?
Yeah, it might help to just understand the scope or the difference of things that happen. On the one hand, there can be issues that are, physical threats, sexual harassment, sexual assault, on the very edge of it. And then there can be just interpersonal interactions where someone feels that they haven't been listened to or that they're being spoken with the wrong tone. Some of that can be subtle. And some of that can be based on misunderstanding or cultural differences, sort of gray areas, and then, everything in between, where there's usually, when we use bullying, we're talking about a pattern of some sort, where there's been a consistent pattern of some kind of mistreatment that someone experiences that's affecting them, either their performance, their health, their mental health, etc., and in a negative way.
Yeah, and the term bullying, which we're kind of pushing back against, aren't we? It connotes a bad actor. And can we flip sides and look at what causes humans, us, to act like bullies at certain times? How does it serve members of our academy to exhibit abrasive behavior? Can we defend bullying?
Yeah, and some of it might not serve even the people who are doing it. And here's a good example of how you need to look at every situation individually, because sometimes people who are experiencing rugged, rough, abrasive, maybe abusive treatment, the person who's doing the behavior may be unaware of the impact they're having on someone else, maybe completely wrapped up in their own problems so that their social skills have really kind of fallen off, or they're venting and discharging inappropriately feelings on someone else without really the intention of trying to hurt someone. There's also bullying that might be more what you call intentional, or attempts to oppress, manipulate, control, intimidate to get something, some result, and to sort of ignore people's feelings and their own experience, in the interactions.
Wow. Yeah. And we see this with lots of bad behaviors. Often people who behave this way, that was their experience. So when they came up through graduate school someplace in the world, they were treated pretty roughly, and then they just kind of repeat that behavior.
Academia does not have a strong mentorship training built into it for faculty. So frequently they'll use whatever role models they had, good or bad, and their own just sort of personality and predilections in terms of how they treat people.
Yeah. And the structure. So I'm thinking if some graduate students are watching us right now, we just want to recognize it's terrifying to confront a bully and confront the system when you have often feel powerless, and often you worry that if you confront this person, they're going to drop you as a graduate student. Can we talk about that a little bit? The system has these ranks, and it's hard to communicate upwards.
Probably the number one reason why people would come to the Ombuds, which is a neutral and confidential resource, because they want to think out loud and talk about what they're dealing with. A relationship with a graduate student and an advisor in particular is just so, the power differential is so profound there, and the implications of that relationship, both on academic success and future professional opportunities, is enormous. And graduate students are very aware of this, and quite often will not bring up topics directly unless they're very sure they have to, because who knows where the ripples might go once they raise up the issue.
Right. And the cost of department. So for folks who might be from academic departments who are looking at addressing this behavior, and by the way, newsflash, the University of California is about to finish a policy that will go to all 10 campuses that is addressing this behavior. So if departments are talking about this, can we explore some of the costs, the negative externalities for bullying behavior in departments? How does it hurt a department if they've got faculty who are abrasive communicators and maybe over the line?
Yeah. Well, on one level, people talk, so reputations get established, and whether they're confronted directly or not, people will talk and communicate about how an advisor operates or how a person treats them, and this can affect recruiting and retention.
Right.
And this, of course, can affect productivity, the reputation of the department. Other faculty may be involved in some situations where there's been a conflict and either sought out for help or what have you, and it can affect faculty relationships, differences of opinion about how to treat graduate students. So in many dimensions, it can go down as well as just morale, the morale of a lab where some of this bullying behavior is going on.
Right. And I imagine everybody watching us has heard of Rate My Professor and Reddit. These are just two channels where people can communicate, they broadcast all around the world about how the culture of their lab, the culture of their academic space, the interactions they have in seminars and so forth. And while that's a great opportunity to celebrate a good, healthy department, it is something that could stop the flow of the smartest graduate students in the world, which we want. So if you are not a grad student at UCSB yet, we'd love to have you here, right? So these great potential grad students are not going to come to our campus if there's a reputation that this abrasive behavior continues. So that was a little editorializing on my part. Sorry. So could you just walk us through if folks felt like they are the target of some abrasive behavior, some bullying, if you will?
Yeah.
What does going to the Ombuds office look like? How do people take advantage of our services?
Yeah, good question. There's a range of how the Ombuds might assist in a situation like this. The very basic one is just being a confidential place for people to talk, think out loud, speak directly about a situation that they may feel troubled by. And often, if there's a pattern of bullying, you'll find a very high stress level in the graduate students, as well as a feeling of what options do I have? I'm stuck with this. How do I do it? Hopelessness can be part of it, or fear. So having the conversation with the ombuds, maybe getting referrals to other resources that can help, counseling or whatever that will help with just dealing with the stress of the situation. And from there, we can help people sort of think through all the different options they might have for working with the problem. And there's no one fix. Even with the policy coming, there's no absolute, here's what you do about bullying. Each situation, you want to look at it and think about the people involved, what your own goals are, what would happen if you took various courses. For instance, you might decide to do nothing.
Oop.
Hey, I'm almost done. This didn't feel right, but I just want to get out of here and graduate without stirring the waters. I'm just going to gut it out and take care of myself. That could be one way to deal with bullying in a department. You might also use the ombuds to strategize how to have a conversation. How would you have, if you wanted to say something more directly, what would you do? How would you do it? You could rehearse that. You could think about it and maybe experiment, and starting in small ways to address problems that way, to see whether you would be heard. It's also a place to learn about formal channels. If you want to raise up a complaint and you don't know what's involved, we can help people kind of look at that and think about the pros and cons. What would happen, if you did this or that. We can also be shuttle diplomats and work between, a graduate student and another graduate student and an advisor, what have you, wherever the conflict may lie, and help people see if they can come to a better understanding of each other and make some agreements about how to go forward in the future.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Great description of what we do. And we're easy to find on campus, ombuds.ucsb.edu. I want to end with a positive question, which is, you've seen it all, David, at top research universities, on your own graduate studies, and you've done consulting. Is it possible to run a department? Have you seen departments out there where the communication is as good as it could be? And if you were advising departments to look at their culture and how they communicate, can it be done, or is this just a quixotic thing to eliminate bad behavior? Can you think of some examples or some of the aspects of what you've seen in departments that seem really healthy when it comes to communication?
Well, it is a challenge, and every department is very unique, and there's a lot of autonomy in academia, and people can operate as they see fit. So it's very hard to come up with one answer to something like this. However, I've seen a number of departments that seem to go well, where people, both in the graduate programs as well as in the faculty, were relatively happy, working well together, sort of appreciating or enjoying what they're doing. And maybe the majority of departments are actually like this. At the Ombuds office, we often don't hear about them. They're not coming to us. But
that's right.
And often there's leadership there, where someone who has good people skills, who knows how to lean into a problem, not ignore it, not overreact to it, how to sort of raise issues that need attention, but doing it in a diplomatic and positive way as opposed to a punitive way, and communicate that at all levels in the department, whether that's a chair or a dean or just a senior faculty person who seems to hold some weight in the department. Those things make a lot of difference.
There's some tips and tricks, and leaders come into our office as well to kick around these ideas on how to improve their culture.
Sometimes they're aware of some bullying going on in their department. They want to know maybe how to help with a conflict or a pattern that they're witnessing. And, we might help them think through those kinds of problems and look at what solutions might be available.
Right.
And we can be mediators, and facilitate difficult conversations. And often these conversations are difficult to raise, and people's ego, their sense of self, their emotions are all involved. And sometimes having a neutral third party in the room just helps everybody relax a little bit, so they can maybe just look at the problem and come up with some answers.
Yeah, great. Well, at least for me, David, communicating with you is the least difficult conversation. It's always
Same here.
always delightful. And thank you for your wisdom on this. And graduate students, if you are feeling a target of abrasive communication, there are all kinds of things that you can do for yourself and really for others as you take on the comfortableness of addressing things that are awkward and difficult. So, all right. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you.